After having recently analyzed battles such as Hürtgen, Aachen, and Ardennes, today it is the turn of the little-known Operation Nordwind, which is considered the last major German offensive on the Western Front. There is no doubt that this offensive, which began on December 31, 1944, was eclipsed by the offensive in the Ardennes, and because of this has gone largely unnoticed and rarely mentioned. However, and as we have just indicated, in this battle that lasted for a month, Germany launched the Attack 6 Army Corps in a desperate attempt to stop the Allied advance and retake the operational initiative. It all started when, on December 16, Hitler gave the order to start the Ardennes offensive, with which he intended to penetrate the American defenses in that sector and advance to the city of Antwerp. With this he would take the important port that was in the city, and would isolate the British armies that were north of said position. With this he hoped to achieve a few months of total tranquility on the Western Front, or even force the British and Americans to sign a separate peace. However, within days of the German attack beginning, American resistance proved to be much stronger than anticipated, and along with other German failures and errors, it became clear that it was going to be impossible to meet the objectives of the operation. Thus, and faced with this stalemate in the Ardennes, to which the Allies had assigned many reinforcements to control the situation, the German High Command gave the green light to a new offensive some 200 kilometers further south, with various objectives. First, the main objective was to deal another heavy blow to the Allies, attacking in an area that had recently been weakened, as part of Patton's Third Army had just been sent north to support the defense of the Ardennes. Second, this would relieve the pressure that the Allies were putting on the German salient formed in the Ardennes, so perhaps it would be possible for the German attack in that sector to continue. It should be noted that this offensive had already been considered during the middle of November, although it had finally been cancelled because it was decided to bet everything on the Ardennes. However, it was as a result of the evolution of this offensive in the Ardennes that this operation in Alsace was resumed. The German plan, which Marshal Rundstedt and other Western Front generals devised, called for a pincer attack that would cut off the salient in northern Alsace that the Allies had conquered. The German objective was to reach the city of Zabern, and from there to see what else they could do, with the recapture of Strasbourg being very present. The German armies that participated in the operation were those belonging to Army Group G, these being the 1st German Army that would be in charge of the northern pincer, and the 19th Army that would attack from the east. In total there were some 500,000 troops on that date, although it is not possible to specify exactly how many of them ended up participating in the operation. In addition, when these figures are given, it must be taken into account that of this total number of troops, only approximately 1/3 are combat soldiers, since the rest have other administrative and logistical tasks that allow frontline soldiers to fight. On paper, both armies had many divisions, most of them being Volksgrenadier divisions. The reality, however, was that many of them had the strength of a regiment, and there were hardly any tanks to support the offensive, since almost all of them had concentrated in the Ardennes. A couple of days before the offensive, Hitler met with the main German generals who were going to participate in this operation, and told them the following in his particular speech. "I fully agree with the measures that have been taken. I hope we can push the right wing in particular to open the entrances to Zabern, and then immediately push into the Rhine plain and liquidate the American divisions. Destroying these American divisions must be the goal. The mere idea of this offensive taking place will have a happy effect on the German people. And if this offensive continues, and the first really great successes appear, you can be sure that the German people will make all the sacrifices that are humanly possible. Therefore, I would like all of us to support this operation with all our energy and drive. This is one of the crucial operations. Its success will absolutely automatically imply the success of the current offensive in the Ardennes. So if we succeed here, we will dominate fate after all. Once we have seen the situation and the German plans, let's see what the Allied situation was and what forces it had in the sector. As we have said before, this sector had been weakened due to the reinforcements that had to be sent to contain the German offensive in the Ardennes. Thus, Eisenhower himself considered that this territory that they had conquered in Alsace was unimportant, and he was studying the possibility of abandoning part of it, with the aim of retreating to better defensible positions and sending his troops to other more important sectors. The Saarland sector was considered to be much more important either for advancing or for receiving a German attack, so just before the Germans began their Northwind operation, the Americans were considering moving back to the Vosges. In any case, this is not why the Allied forces in this area were weak, since it is estimated that between the 7th American Army and the French First Army they had about 700,000 troops. Once again, and just like on the German side, not all of them participated in these combats, nor were all of them frontline soldiers. And well, once we have entered the situation, let's go to the development of the battle. The German attack began on the afternoon of December 31st without any previous artillery attack, completely surprising the American defenders. A first German attack group managed to break through the front around Bleisbruck and in a couple of days penetrated 10 kilometers to the south in the direction of the French town of Aachen. A second assault group attacked about 25 kilometers further to the southeast and achieved a further penetration, reaching the city of Wingen by the first days of January. Despite the fact that the Germans had not obtained great successes during these first days, the reaction of the American General Devers, who was the commander of that sector, was to start the planned withdrawal and not put up a tough resistance to the Germans. This made de Gaulle very angry, who did not want French territory to be ceded again, and he did everything possible so that Eisenhower did not authorize said withdrawal, which he finally achieved. Thus, in view of their poor progress and the depth of the American defenses at both Aachen and Wingen, the Germans decided to attack further east, and the offensive was now directed in the direction of Haguenau. To do this, they attacked from the north and also from the east, for which the Germans had to cross the Rhine and establish a bridgehead. This attack had much more momentum than the previous ones, and the Germans were able to advance little by little about 30 kilometers until they reached the Moder River, after having taken the city of Haguenau. In an attempt to stop this German advance, the Americans had to send reinforcements to the area, with the aim of carrying out a counterattack. This Allied mission was led by the 12th Armored Division, which was repulsed by German anti-tank guns at Hürtgen on 8–10 January. At the same time, a little further south, the Germans attacked in the direction of Strasbourg. This sector was defended by French soldiers, who at first suffered a defeat and fell back a few kilometers. However, a few days later they managed to regroup and managed to stop the German advance dead about 20 kilometers south of Strasbourg on January 13th. From this point the combats were very intense, and they were taking place along a front line of about 100 kilometers in length. The main German attack was taking place north of Strasbourg, in a German attempt to cross the Moder River and continue south. On this date, which runs from January 16th to 21st, the Germans had also been able to bring reinforcements to the area, in which panzer units stand out, such as the 10th Division of the Waffen-SS. Despite the fact that this division wreaked havoc around Hürtgen, defeating 3 American battalions and taking down numerous armored vehicles, it was not enough to break through the Allied defenses, and by January 21st the German offensive stalled. Next, the Germans tried a series of breaks in the direction of Zabern, failing to make any new advance on the Allied lines, which had already been sufficiently reinforced, and which were in better defensive positions. This lack of momentum was also due to the fact that the reinforcements and supplies that the Germans could send to this region of Alsace were completely reduced, due to the fact that all their attention had to be placed on the Eastern Front, in which the Soviets were approaching Berlin. Thus, far from being able to send any units, the 3 most powerful divisions that had participated in this offensive were sent to the Vistula Army Group during the days of January 27th and early February. In any case, and as we have indicated before, by January 25, 1945, the offensive of Army Group B was completely paralyzed north of Alsace due to the weakening of the German army, which had exhausted all its reserves of supplies, ammunition, and gasoline, which had been assigned for the operation. As a consequence of such inconveniences, the Germans opted to keep the ground they had gained and to definitively cancel Operation Northwind, while they reinforced the Oder front. In this operation, the German army suffered approximately 23,000 casualties between dead, wounded, missing and prisoners. The Allies for their part suffered 14,000 casualties, being 12,000 soldiers from the American Army and 2,000 from the French Army. After having finished Operation Northwind, the German army had reconquered about 40 kilometers of territory inside Alsace. However, this conquest did not have any kind of importance, since the Germans failed to meet any of their planned objectives. This was due to the fact that they were not able to wear down the Allies, nor conquer Strasbourg, nor favor the development of the offensive in the Ardennes. Thus, they wore out more than the Americans and had more losses than them, and as always happened to them, they were losses that they could hardly bear. Well, what we have just seen was the last offensive of the German army on the Western Front, after which they found themselves immersed in a series of defensive battles until, between March and April 1945, all the fronts collapsed. If you are interested in other battles prior to these, such as those of Aachen, Hürtgen, or Ardennes, I will leave them in the description. Thank you all for being part of this community, and especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and we'll see each other here as always, next Thursday and Sunday. See you soon.